Squirrel stay away.
All right. Thank you, folks, for coming tonight. I appreciate you coming out to Stowe Town Hall. We haven't been here in a while, but we've done a lot of forums about Lower Village in this space, so this seems just mostly appropriate right now to be back here. My name is Jesse Stedman. I'm the Stowe Town Planner, and I'm here with Valerie Ortiz. She's our assistant planner, and the planning board is here as well tonight, sitting out in, I guess we'll call it a crowd. So, you know, I wanted to go a little bit over the purpose of tonight's forum. Obviously, the Lower Village construction project, which we're all familiar with, has been a long, strange trip, and we are now in the second construction season. And what we wanted to do tonight was really be able to give you a sense of kind of take us back to the beginning and figure out what was the fundamentals of the project in the first place. What happened during the construction season and the project that has kind of led us to a second construction season, and give some idea of what it's going to take to get us to the finish line. So that's essentially the purpose of tonight. Obviously, there's a lot of questions, so the presentation portion will probably be quicker than usual, which I'm sure no one has any problem with, and then we can try to answer questions as best as possible. If you do have a specific question that's in regard to maybe your own property or you're a butter, if we hold you to the end, it's not because we don't want to answer, we just would rather speak with you right at the end, especially if it's anything technical or specific to one property. So that's what we're thinking there. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Valerie, and we'll get going.
Great. Thank you. Can you all hear me all right? All right, great. So just to start off, just to refresh our memory of what this project was. So this stems from a decade-long planning effort that highlighted the need for transportation, infrastructure, and zoning improvements to complete the town's vision for the Lower Village District. And so while this construction project has gone on, we've been able to move forward with some of these other planning efforts through the creation of the Lower Village Revitalization Committee, and also through the completion of the Business District Assessment and Market Analysis for Lower Village. So the intent of this project has not changed. So we've always wanted to replace the decades-old drainage infrastructure and improve the safety and accessibility for all users in the district. So the core of the project has not changed. All of the public input and traffic analysis that went into designing the original project still holds. So the project spans from Bradley Lane east to White Pond Road. There are many different complete streets components to the project as well. So there are sidewalks, bike lanes, protected crosswalks as well. There are also traffic calming devices for the corridor. So we have hardscaped medians. There are also landscaped buffer strips that will go between the road itself and the pathways, and there are turn lanes that take you off of Great Road. And so again, these are all design components that have remained unchanged. So during last year's construction season, we were able to complete several of our goals. So we did replace that decades-old drainage infrastructure, which really was the largest component to this project. The sidewalks are all partially completed, which includes the installation of the wheelchair ramps. And the surface course of the paving between Bradley Lane and the post office is also completed. Most of the road widening is finalized, which includes some of the reconfiguration of the driveways as well. So I'll turn it over to Jesse to talk about the construction delays and what our next steps are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Valerie kind of went over a little bit of, what we've actually completed. We can obviously talk more about those details. Despite the delay, we still are excited to get this project done, even more so than we were when we started. And I know that there's a lot of folks out there that were feeling like, well, this has gone on a lot longer than we anticipated, and we share that sentiment. But I think, as Valerie said, the core of the project, the rationale for it, the reasons behind why it was designed the way it was is still crucial, and it's still more important than ever. And so as we got through as we kind of go through how the construction season went, I think you'll be able to see kind of what our intention was in finishing on time and kind of the types of judgment we were trying to figure out as we went forward. So as the project started, you all remember we got a notice to proceed sometime in April of 2018. It was early April. It was actually the following fall, but couldn't do anything over the winter with pavement, so we had to wait till April. And we started off pretty quick and got into some of the initial, if you remember in the very beginning, a lot of the issues with Lower Village was that road was narrow, then wide, then narrow, then wide. And so one of the core project goals here was to try to make it consistent the whole way through. So some of the first things, if you recall, was some of the road widening areas. There was a lot of digging along the sides of the road. Traffic was pushed to both sides. And then really the bulk of the summer was getting that drainage trunk line in. And so that was the underground drainage system. And that was really the core component here. It's what we knew from the highway department, we knew from studies that was failing on us. You saw some of the photos. We've all driven through the huge puddles in Lower Village. We knew it was an issue. So that was the bulk of the summer. We ran into fairly normal stuff, utilities that weren't where the plan said they were. Nothing that was really out of the ordinary when you start digging under a road that's been there for hundreds of years. So it wasn't until late summer that we really started having some concerns about the slope and the grade of the proposed surface pavement. So there's been a lot of talk about the drainage system in Lower Village not functioning correctly, or that something was wrong out there. And I think what I wanted to clear up tonight was that this has nothing really to do with the underground drainage system. When we talk about drainage, what we meant is that the way that water on the surface is directed to those underground spots. So how does the water get from the crown of the road to a basin where it then gets put into the pipes and then out the other end? And where we were starting to have concerns was over those proposed grades of that final surface pavement. So that happened in about late summer, and we said, okay, there's some inconsistencies here. Things aren't looking quite right. Went back to our designer and said, we want you to go back to the drawing board, just figure out what's going on. That's what the designers do. And they went back to the drawing board and came up with some design fixes to get those grades to be more consistent throughout the entire stretch. And to do that, there's usually kind of either a leveling pavement that goes down to fill in some low areas, or in some cases, maybe there's a mill where you take off some high spots. It's kind of an exercise in trying to level everything out and getting everything to drain the way you want it to. So fast forward, not too long. It wasn't until September, October. We're like, okay, we've gotten over that hump. We fixed that design problem. We're now, we're getting into fall. You can start to feel the cool weather. We know that the end of pavement is somewhere out ahead of us, but it's in sight. Usually it's right around early December that the asphalt plants will start to close. So we are now in the portion of the project where the underground drainage is really done. And we're focused on trying to figure out how to make sure that that final surface course of pavement, the last piece that goes on, is going to be done correctly, so then we can finally put in the curbing behind it, make sure the sidewalks are all buttoned up, and do all of those things that end up leading and looking like a newly finished road project. Obviously, that wasn't done, and that's why it looks like a half-constructed road project. So it was in September and October that both the contractor and our peer review engineer both were noting that things did not just still seem right with the grades and the slopes of that proposed surface course. And from the technical end, obviously, Valerie and I, the role of the planning department, the planning board, was to understand the concepts and the fundamentals underpinning this project and to move it to the design phase. We then hire designers to help us figure out the technical pieces, and then we hire a contractor to construct the project. So it was at this phase that we went back to the designer again and asked to revise the plan. At this point, we knew that in order to revise it to get it to where we believed would fix the problem and finish the project prior to the asphalt's closing, and what I mean is get the project done for that season and get it done right, we knew that it was going to cost more than what we had had at the time. And so that was when we worked with the Highway Department through State Highway Chapter 90 funds to get some more funding to get this thing done. Because what we were afraid of is that if it goes over the season, extra costs will be required to to winterize it and get it ready for that. So everybody was focused on, let's get this project done in 2018. So obviously that didn't happen. And it wasn't much later in November when we had our paving subcontractor also raise some concerns about some of the thickness of the pavement itself that was proposed to be put down. And it was at that point that we really got all of the technical expertise that we could on our end. We worked with our a consulting engineer that we've worked with on a lot of other projects in town, and we asked if their firm would take a look at this with us to try to understand what was happening here. And while we couldn't get an answer on exactly what the solution was or exactly what the problem was, we knew that if the pavement were to go down in the way that it was designed, that we could be looking at puddling in the winter because the water wasn't being conveyed correctly to the underground drainage. We could be looking eventually at future crumbling of pavement, and even places where the pavement was so thin that you could get these cracks from the previous pavement that kind of reflect through the surface. And I think everybody, at least in our office and in the planning board, had this feeling of, if we go through this project and we spend the amount of money that we intend to spend on this project, and in 2 years from now that road starts to fall apart on us, that is a worst case scenario. So it was in November where we made the call, working with our consulting engineer, with everybody, the whole project team, folks in town, to decide to say, you know what, we do not have the time to figure out what is wrong with this road. And that was when we decided to winterize the project. And what I mean by winterize was we needed to put down some curb, so just some asphalt curb to kind of keep the sides of the road in check, to kind of hold all the loam where it was, to hold the base course of the sidewalks where it was. We needed to, I'm sure everybody recalls, the manhole covers and things of that nature. They were raised with the hope that we were going to finish the project, and then once we realized we couldn't, we had to then lower them again. So there was a little bit of scrambling there when we realized, hey, we don't have the time to make this work. So our plan right from that time was, we're going to spend the winter of 2019 figuring out what exactly happened and what is it going to take to get it done. And so, next few slides here, we kind of just describe a little bit about what it was that we've undertaken since that time and where we think we're going to land here. So over this past winter, we hired a new firm, a new engineering firm, to look at this and give a fresh look at what was going on with the surface of the road. Especially the surface of the pavement, how that water was going to get to the drainage system. We flagged out a couple of other design issues, just the way that the pavement will interact with the existing driveways and the other curb cuts along the area. We wanted to make sure that all of this was intended to work in the way that we originally believed it to be when we went forward at 2017 town meeting for this project. To kind of build in some, obviously we've felt like we needed a little more security here, so we've built in and asked our consulting engineer again to help the town and the planning board, ourselves, the whole project team, assess some of the design alternatives and solutions that new engineering firm will provide us. So the point there is there could be a few different ways to solve the problems out there, and we want to make sure that we've got somebody who has the town's best interest in mind, who is helping us to kind of give us a third-party opinion on what's the best course of action to take. So that's something else that we're going to be doing, and that we've been working with that firm as we move along here. I just want to go through a little bit of the project funding sources, and then we can kind of ask questions and kind of talk about some of the details here. I know we've kind of run through it here. So these are the original project funding sources. This is pretty much the original slide I showed in 2017. This all began, obviously, with a lot of planning, but then it really moved into high gear when we got an $850,000 grant from the MassWorks program, and that's what pushed us into the implementation phase. Our highway department had been saving up money for the last few years to be able to put towards this project. They had committed $400,000. We used some funds from our sidewalk fund, and then we went to town meeting and we said, we're going to borrow the we asked to borrow the remainder of the amount of money to get the project done. So that was what the original sources looked like. So after that time, we actually got some additional funds. So during the story I was just telling about how the project kind of unfolded, we were able to see that we needed some additional funds. MassWorks provided us an extra $150,000. We were able to find some further money in our sidewalk account due to just kind of the year passing and that account growing a little bit. And that $180,000 from the Chapter 90 funds, that's when I recalled back in, I believe it was September, October, in that whole design discussion about getting the project done that year. That's what that is in regard to. So that brought the total funds allocated to date up from that $1,700,000 figure. So I just wanted to kind of see what the original total was and where those funds are now and what was spent to date. And that kind of to give you the underpinning of what that story of the construction looked like. Unfortunately, the funds needed to finish part, which is the most important, is still somewhat of a question mark at the moment. So what I wanted to describe was what it entails that we need to do here to get the project finished. And the design contract is the most crucial piece. So we had to hire a new firm. And so some of the funds that we're going to be requesting regard being able to pay that firm to be able to figure out what the problem is and help us fix it. There are those completion of unfinished tasks, which I'm going to have Valerie describe in a little bit, just because there's, just to kind of help visualize what you're really seeing out there. But there's unfinished tasks. When we had to winterize the project, obviously we weren't done. The surface course of the sidewalks wasn't down. A lot of obviously the road striping hadn't been put down. A lot of little pieces. The medians that were installed had to be taken out. Those are still crucial to the project. They were to be put back in. So there's all these pieces that weren't yet finished. So that's part of what the request is entailing. And then, of course, there's the construction funds for the technical revisions. And that's our big question mark at the moment. We carried a number of $500,000 in the warrant that was based on some estimates that we were able to pull together in-house and extrapolate. But I caution with this number, until we get this preliminary estimate, which was supposed to be tonight, is looking like tomorrow morning, that we are going to be able to really provide something, an update to, I'm sure, all of the Capital Planning Committee, the Finance Committee, and the others that are waiting anxiously as well as everybody else. So, so this is still kind of a number that is fluid, and we're trying to pin down exactly what that kind of preliminary estimate will look like. Our plan at that point is to then take that preliminary estimate, work with our contractor who has been ET&L on this project, who's still working with us, and the designer, and to try to pin down closely what is going to be the actual cost. So at town meeting in 2017, we went forward with an estimate. What we're hoping this time is, since we're all in this together now, our contractor, the ET&L, and the designer, we're all able to work together. We're hoping to get more of a direct idea of what the cost will be, since before we hadn't gone out to bid, so you can't say, for instance, that it's going to be exactly this much. But this time around, that is what we're hoping to get. So we're going to start with a preliminary estimate. We're going to try to nail it down. I know we're in the final weeks here, but we intend to go to town meeting with something that looks a little more solid than whatever preliminary estimate we get back here. So we can talk about details about that if needed, but I wanted to ask Valerie just to kind of go over some of the items that we're actually going to be completing. So, thanks.
All right, so this is a brief list of what is yet to be done in terms of the project. So a lot of it is just cleaning it up. So making sure that those the sidewalks are actually finished. We have the final course of paving over them. Making sure that those connections from the sidewalks are complete to the wheelchair ramps. We have to put down the road striping for the lanes and also for the bike lanes, make sure that the crosswalk markings are in. We'll also seed all along the landscape buffer strip between the road and the pathways themselves. And then we'll also put back in those permanent medians. So there are going to be 4 hardscaped medians, as well as about 3 pedestrian refuge islands, so those protected crosswalks that we have. And then essentially the rest of the work is just cleaning it up, making sure that it looks really nice and that we're really proud of our business district. So we are anticipating that construction would start in June. So again, this is contingent on the May town meeting and then the work that we're doing with our new firm and ET&L. And then construction would proceed through the summer. So right now they're saying that we're looking at making sure that it's as efficient as possible, but the engineers making sure that we're also thinking about any unanticipated events that might happen. So we're saying that October would be the completion date, but it could be before. So those are the only next steps that we have at this moment. Yeah.
At this point we're happy to open it up. I know there's plenty of questions. We'll try to answer them as best as we can, and then we can go from there. If there's any, like I said, if there's anything particular, we can try to talk with folks directly afterward. So I know that for SO TV, it's helpful for folks to use microphones. So if you can, it's up here if you'd like. I can hand that around too.
I think everybody can hear me. Just want to backtrack to one thing that you said. You said this project was never put out for bid. Project engineers bid up $2 million for this project. So we agreed on spending $2 million. Now you're asking for another $500,000 for something that's not going to affect any citizens of the town of Stowe, basically.
So I think either I misspoke or we just didn't hear each other correctly. The project definitely went out to bid. After we had a preliminary estimate, the project went out to bid. We got 3 bids back. The winning bid was for $1,594,000, and that was what we ended up going with for this project. So I hope that clears that up.
Well, my understanding was that the contractor bid $2 million for the project.
No, I think the highest bid we got was from another contractor that was just under $2 million, but we ended up, I think our lowest bid ended up being ET&L, and they were right here in town, and it was a good proposal, and that's what we went with.
Okay, just step up a little bit. You got a bid for $1.5 million. You've already gone over the expenses by $500,000 without going back to the town and getting more money for the town. Now you're going to ask the residents of the town to spend another $500,000 on a road to nowhere, basically. The residents of this town will never see or reap any benefits for what you're doing down at that 117 part of the town. If you can tell me what the residents of the town of Stowe are going to get out of that, where this is just a cut-through road, please explain to me and maybe the other residents what we're going to get out of this project.
Okay, I can definitely answer the last part of that comment and question. So actually this is one of the bigger, obviously the bigger road projects that we've tried to undertake here in Stowe. I think it has probably the biggest impact of any project that we've undertaken. It's our main business district. For a long time we've had an issue with our underground drainage system. The longer we let that go, especially without any public financing, it's something that is just simply out there waiting for us to address. So there is the argument of when do you address it. I think the fact that we got such a large grant at that time really pushed the envelope a little bit. So that's from the infrastructure standpoint. I think if you look at the traffic management standpoint, we've been hearing for years and years about traffic congestion that continues to grow in Lower Village. There was all these talks about, at one time, about having roundabouts there. We quickly realized that that wasn't possible without some pretty serious takings from abutters. After the discussion of roundabout, people bandied about the idea of having some sort of traffic signals in Lower Village. We realized that you put a traffic signal on 117 in that location, you have backups that are going to approach a mile. So really what we had was a limited number of options to really try to increase the ability for people to get through Lower Village at peak times. A couple things that we did that we know worked from the past was when the reason why those curbs and those buckets, the reflectors were there for so long is because when they were first put in, we finally got some feedback from the
police department to say, you know what, this actually reduced traffic incidents. But for a long time, we didn't have the money to make them anything more than just curbs and bumpers. So this project really said, hey, let's make good on what that data that we have and let's make it permanent. And that's what we did with those medians. And so we found out that, you know, since we don't have much in the way of pedestrian bike infrastructure down there, we're seeing more cyclists than ever. We're hearing from people all over town that they are interested in being able to walk around and get out of their house and actually be in their town. We thought, let's use those medians to also be pedestrian refuge islands so that you don't feel like you're taking your life in your own hands when you try to cross 3 lanes of traffic on Lower Village. So in addition to the pedestrian aspects, you also have the bike lanes that will go through on both sides. So there's been a lot of talk about, you know, whether or not there's bikes in Lower Village. I mean, the fact that now the Assabet River Rail Trail ends at White Pond Road right down the street. This is our main business district. We want to try to get as much action in and out of Lower Village as possible, especially from those businesses. I hope that if there are any of those businesses here, I'd like to, you know, hear their thoughts on that. We've certainly got that back from the data and from the surveys that we've done. So there's a lot of benefits on this project. I'm sure I'm missing some, but they've been, it's not that it was cooked up in the planning department over the last year. I think if you'd like to look at it, I mean, the amount of data over the years and years from residents and from surveys, from all the technical stuff, but all of the people who have provided us, made us confident that this was the right approach. The technical stuff is where we got bogged down, and that's what we're trying to resolve right now.
I appreciate the project as a resident down there, certainly for greater access across the street to the shopping. My question is about the design firm, the original design firm. Have they been paid in full? And if they have, are there efforts being made to retrieve the funds that were, in my opinion, misspent or the job wasn't done right?
You know, of course, a lot of that discussion happens in executive session and behind closed doors in town, but the town is basically keeping all of their options open in regards to remedies, and I'll just have to leave it at that.
How much money has gone into that design work by the sum of these 2 firms now been involved, one of them twice? What's the total amount of money that they have been bid or have been paid?
Yeah, so the original, okay, so let me just make sure that I've got the right numbers in my head. The original design contract, they got us to the point of having the actual plans that we went out to bid on. I believe that was a $104,000 contract. A lot of that was paid and done way early, right? So the funds that were really being expended from the former designer through construction were for construction administration services. So for actually overseeing.
I didn't ask that question.
Sorry.
I asked the question about the design, not supervising.
Okay, so
the designer supervising the construction.
Yeah. So we've got the $104,000 contract.
Yeah.
We will soon find out what. I'm sorry, we have a $104,000 contract, and then I believe the new contract was for $115,000 to fix. Yep, to fix the design issues. Yeah. That included, and I know you didn't ask for that, but that number includes construction administration, which I believe was somewhere in the 40s. So if you kind of subtract that out, you're looking at actual design somewhere in the $60,000 to $70,000 for the second time around. So all told, I'll say it's somewhere around $175,000 for the design.
If you could just clarify, because I didn't hear well enough. So why are we taking $60,000 out of the second design amount?
So what I was trying to describe is that second contract that he was asking about was really, has multiple tasks inside of it, because we asked one firm to not only design the solutions that we need, but also to help us oversee the construction so that we can ensure that we're getting the design that they designed built. So they're just kind of wrapped up. So I just wanted to show that inside of that number are some different buckets. So.
Something doesn't seem right that the first designer, basically gave us the wrong design. And it doesn't seem that we should be paying him, then we have to go and pay almost the same amount for a second designer. It doesn't gel. It seems like, why are we still paying that first designer who messed up?
It's an unfortunate reality. All I can say right now is our main goal at the moment is to get this project done. If there are issues that come up after this that other folks in town need to deal with and work with, like I was saying earlier, that is up to them. But right now, our goal, at least in our department, is to get this project done. So, Rich.
Hey, Jess. So you said that the underground drainage was the kind of main impetus of the project. And I'm not sure if anybody can speak how well that was accomplished. You know, I'm assuming it's great. But clearly on the top surface drainage, you know, we got some problems. I believe they extend not just on the street itself draining, it extends back into some of the properties along 117 where the road surface was raised so much. I think, I don't know if there was a constant, but I know there are places where the road surface was raised 12 to 14 inches above what the land on either side of it was, or is still. So once you put those sidewalks in, obviously we had puddling, which I think is a kind term in some areas. We had some major puddling on the road, but we also had some beyond puddling on the properties where the water has now basically got landlocked. Is there any portion of the current plan that is going to address that? And is there any portion of the current budgeting that is going to address that stuff?
I would say yes to both. You know, when we were trying to figure out what the scope of work looked like for the new design, we had heard from folks like yourself, other abutters along the stretch where some of the problem areas were. We felt we had a pretty good idea based on the discussions we had had with abutters, with our consulting engineer, and we asked this firm specifically to look at how especially how the driveways interacted, but also where we noted from the cross sections that we thought we might see a future issue with drainage on neighboring properties. And so yes, those were part of the scope. That's part of what we're going to be working with. If it turns out that we need to work with an individual property owner and we can't do it within our right of way, we'll have that discussion, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet. But
That's on the table.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Nancy.
Hi. I'm wondering if the entrance and egress to White Pond Road is completely etched in stone now, because I wrote several emails, but I didn't get an acknowledgement or any response. But I'm a school bus driver, and I go into White Pond Road twice at the morning rush hour and twice in the afternoon hour, and I cannot tell you how much that has changed how vehicles can use that or actually not use it. So, for example, it's all starting up again. All the landscape and tree trucks and everybody are coming out of White Pond, taking up the road, and I pull in with an equal-sized school bus, and it's whoever gets there first gets to proceed. And I have 52 kids on. I did the safe route and I stopped, but I'm stopping in eastbound rush hour traffic on Great Road, waiting for them to pull out with the trailers and get around so I can inch in. There used to be separate, safe in and out. I don't know why we created a hazardous situation. And it's something new and different every day. Who's going to stop? And also they get new guys, new trucks in there. We come head on to each other. There's something every day at that area if you're a large vehicle. I inch to the right coming in, they inch to the left but can't see around me. There's people beeping horns every single day. That is just not a good entrance. Whatever little bit of island is left should be shaved down or something. But it is just not an improvement. I know we're trying to calm traffic. This is totally stopping traffic every day. And it's the same thing in the afternoon. So why is that an acceptable design?
So there are a few things there. Let me try to answer each one of those. So I remember this discussion. I remember when you brought this up. We've had plenty of people comment on White Pond Road. So we'll go back to the original. The original way that White Pond Road worked is that you could be going eastbound at a pretty solid clip and cut into White Pond Road. And while that might have been nice and fluid, it was also fast, and it also certainly wasn't going to be conducive to having the sidewalks out there and all of that. So there was some middle ground, obviously, and I think they probably missed the mark. And so what we asked is, first thing we asked is our fire chief, what is your apparatus like? What's the turning radius on those? Can you guys make that turn? We talked with some of the businesses on White Pond Road. We asked them, what is the actual issue you're running into? We heard stories similar to like what you just brought up. And so then we went to our designer and said, we wanted to do more than just do turning radius and show us on the map.
Because it's a 90-degree
Yep,
turn.
I understand that. So we're actually going to do some real, live simulations. We're going to get the biggest trucks that we've got. We're going to get other people to show us trucks, and really make sense of it. Now we're not designing it to be accessible at high speed, at a faster speed for a semi truck. This is meant to be. We get that it's a commercial area. Like I said, there's a balance somewhere in there. But I have heard those concerns. Valerie and I, for a couple of months on this project, noted the way that was being designed, and it did not quite look like what we had on the plan.
Plus,
So
when
that
they
is definitely
plowed,
getting looked at.
it got even narrower.
Yep, so we will hopefully know soon what our expectation is. Was that design, was it actually built to design and just isn't functioning correctly, or was somehow it was not built to design? That's what we need to figure out, and we should know that in this coming week once we have our design memo. Done.
Jesse, you show a picture up here, which I know is not 117. However, it'd be nice if it were. When one proceeds down 117, either direction, especially if you're going east and you're looking south, I'd like to say it looks pretty shoddy at best. The whole district needs to be cleaned up, some bylaw enforcement.
Yes.
And I don't like to bring up the use of truck and car lot and junkyard, but it just looks so tacky. Town is spending all this money to make it a nice road. How do we get property owners to clean up their act, if you will? I mean, they're probably following the bylaws, but it looks awful down there, especially on the right side. Now we hear rumors Shaw's make a lot of business. Market basket.
There's always rumors. I think Valerie touched on it earlier, which was that the road was never meant to be the silver bullet to fix Lower Village, and that we knew that there were three core issues there. We needed some zoning upgrades, we needed to fix the infrastructure itself, and then there's also been other issues of infrastructure, water, utilities, things of that nature. So it was never meant to be that the road would somehow solve all of these other problems. Lower Village, that is why we did the business district assessment and the market analysis. We wanted to get a sense of where does Lower Village sit within the regional mix? Why is it important? What kind of business can it attract in the future? We didn't want to simply finish this road project and then say, all right, we're done here. So there's this, for better or worse, this is the beginning. There's more work to be done. So
it seems like now's a good time to put a hard press on what needs to be cleaned up down there.
yeah, at the moment we have a Lower Village Revitalization Subcommittee. They've been meeting for months now. They're getting ready to provide a final report to the planning board on some of their recommendations on things that they think could improve the district. We're trying to move on kind of multiple fronts. Obviously, while we have this big stalled project, it kind of takes a little bit of the air out of the room, but there are some good things that are moving forward nonetheless that we're all meant to be in play, and we're expected to kind of follow up on a completed road project.
It would certainly show the taxpayers that are dig pretty deeply for this additional money, that there's some mutual help from the other side, from the property owners.
Gotcha.
You've got numerous emails from me, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but one thing that I'd like to bring up that I know I've brought up back in the planning is the fact that the speed limit is as high as it is through there. It should be dropped down, because I can attest that the one median that still exists, that's in front of my house, does not slow anybody down. It just causes them to swerve at a faster rate of speed. It's like they're trying to beat it or something. It still does not give me enough refuge to get into my own driveway. And because they made my driveway shorter and a higher, more of a pitch, it's like I have to drive up a ramp instead of a driveway, and I bottom out my car. I can't even get up onto my sidewalk because my driveway is 3 inches lower than my walkway on one end and 6 inches lower on the other end. And the walkway is only 2 feet wide. So when this whole plan came up, it wasn't supposed to be digging out the sidewalk, you weren't gonna kill my tree. They dug out the sidewalk twice. They lowered my driveway. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to fix my property, and I'm the one resident that is zoned commercial for some reason. I'm not gonna put money into fixing anything on my property until this project's done, because it's been a nightmare. I don't know if anybody's aware, but my house was broken into during this construction, because people were so used to people just walking around that nobody saw the man carrying a sack of money away from my house. So it's been an absolute nightmare as a resident living on this strip. But one of the things that could have solved this is just drop the speed limit. Bolton did it. Nobody goes over 30 miles per hour in Bolton because you get pulled over. I've invited the town cops numerous times to just sit in my driveway and run traffic, because they could make so much money for this project if they just ran traffic from my driveway.
Well, what about she said slowing the speed limit?
So, slowing the speed limit is something that we talk about frequently. It's not as easy as it sounds. Doesn't mean it's impossible, just not as easy as it sounds. So it is a process of working with Mass DOT. It's a process of just getting some speed data out there. And what you do is you take a certain percentile of the speeds that are taking place. And the reason we tend to shy away from that as a resolution to kind of several problems is because sometimes those speed numbers come back and they're a little higher than what you're expecting. And Mass DOT doesn't automatically say, well, we'll lower it. They'll say, well, maybe the speed limit's not high enough. So there are times when we are reluctant to do that. Doesn't mean it can't, like I said, doesn't mean it can't be done. There may be roads where it is appropriate. The speeds at Lower Village, the original designers did not think that speed was a problem except for the 2 gateways, Lee, which is right near your house, and out near White Pond Road, where folks are coming into the district. But obviously, once you get into the district, a lot goes on there, and speeds drop a little bit. So that was part of the reason for the way that this road was striped and the way that the medians were placed, was to try to deal with that issue from a design standpoint rather than trying to attack the kind of the speed limit solution.
Is that because it's a state route?
So it's a state
I know
number.
in Concord, they've been putting up very low speed limits. Hither and thither, and they've been just simply being approved by the town.
So I'll look into that and see what that's all about. But from the process I understand, especially when we were going through our Complete Streets project, that it was slightly more complex. But I'm absolutely looking for solutions all the time.
Well, Concord seems to be able to do it, but that's not on the not state numbered roads. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it. You're saying you're not sure. That's great.
Well, speed zones, when they are posted, they're posted by Mass DOT. A couple town meetings ago, we tried to pass something that we could reduce some speed limits in some areas, but those are only in areas that aren't already posted. So there's a lot that goes into it. But
that's actually not the case in Concord, because I actually read what they had done there. It was simply approved by the town board.
So I've just simply never heard that, but I will look into it. If you have a reference or you want to talk to me afterward and point me in the right direction, I will look at it. And then we'll go over here.
Just a quick comment. I'm on the corner of White Pond, and the speeds are actually, the trucks and cars are actually going much faster than they were before the road work started, coming in right there. They may slow down in front of Shaw's, but they're actually coming into town faster, which makes no sense to me. I don't know if it's smoother with the regrading or what, but they're definitely coming in at higher speeds.
Okay.
And I would like to personally invite the DOT to come down to my office building and make a left-hand turn onto 117 at 5 o'clock, and I think you will find they will lower the speed limit.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The gateway where the speeds are higher at the White Pond end means that people at Pompo and Red Acre cannot get in and join traffic. It's a rush hour. It's
very
rush hour.
difficult spot. One?
Just to go back to what you just said, Mass DOT, back in August of last year, I made a number of calls to Mass DOT. I ended up getting to the Mass DOT and the engineer for the Mass DOT. When I asked the question of Ms. Sullivan about our project and thing, the DOT knew nothing about this project. The Mass DOT had nothing to do with this project, and
That's correct.
that engineer ended up calling our Department of Public Works to get an explanation of what was going on with the project. She called me back and said, they said something, but you say the Mass DOT has control over the speed limit. Mass DOT has no control over that road. It's controlled by the town. And I don't know where you come up with some of these definitions, because when you talk to the DOT, and I've talked to them for the last 2 years, none of the things that you're giving to the residents or the people here are factual.
The town still does not set speed zones, statutory speed limits, as far as I know. That's set and done by Mass DOT through an actual engineered process. If I'm wrong, I will accept that, but that's always what I've been operating under. It's what I've understood from the discussions I've had with multiple leaders.
Why don't you chat with the DOT out in Worcester? Ms. Sullivan's the engineer out there. She'd be happy to give you all the thoughts of the Mass DOT. And you and I have talked about this subject in the past, and I kind of get the same answer from you, that the residents have no control over their roads. That's not true. You go to the DOT, you get the 96-page thing. It tells, as I told you, the residents of certain streets have the right to do what they have and get things done. But you don't seem to want to go along with that.
Yeah, call Concord, see how they do it.
Okay. I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I'm happy to learn a new solution if we can figure one out. So I'll leave it at that, but duly noted. I'm going to go right behind.
I walk on that road every day from Grand Lake to school, and I'm crossing the road, and it's a pain waiting for people to stop. They whiz by you without any hesitation. What sort of marking is there going to be on those roads? And what sort of signs are there for the people to slow down?
So in regards to kind of pedestrian crossing and that kind of thing, is
Yes.
that what you're asking? Yeah. So there's going to be, Valerie, correct me if I'm wrong, how many crosswalks?
I think there are 3 protected crosswalks, and obviously we have none of the signage that's going to be there at the end of the project is installed right now, and some of that does include those yellow advisory signs, so that folks know that pedestrians are crossing in those locations. Yeah, so right now it's tough to try to imagine what it might be like once we're completely done with the project, but certainly these design components that have yet to be installed are meant to slow down traffic and make sure that the pedestrian has more safety when you're trying to cross that street.
Okay, just one addition to that. The sidewalks, it's nice to have the sidewalks, but they're only in the season that there's no snow.
That's right.
I mean, they get piled up so high on both sides, and nobody takes care of those sidewalks. Yeah. I mean, that's, so you can only walk during from April on until it starts snowing again in the fall. So what good are the sidewalks?
Dennis?
My understanding to that was I was told that those are seasonal sidewalks. The town does not have the snowplow apparatus to plow the sidewalks, and basically the town is just throwing the snow onto the sidewalk from the street. And unless you guys owned apparatus to clear the sidewalks, then they're not going to get cleared, and there's going to be a seasonal sidewalk. But just to touch on the speed, you know where I sit in that office, I'm facing opposite of it, and I'm facing Red Acre Road. And now that the road is actually wider, even if you have those landscape meetings in the middle, I can tell you that, I mean, Katie is right, going east to westbound and west to eastbound, those cars are going. There's people coming eastbound from westbound with the directional on to take a left on Pompey, directional on take a left on Red Acre, and the cars are going by them at such a clip. Now, if you put the sidewalks in, the landscape medians in, that's gonna be a little bit of a divider, so they can go back, by them on the right at a clip, because they have the room to do that now. And if they're what you call a safety section for the person to do halfway across and sit there, if they step off of that safety area in front of somebody that's taking a left, they're gonna get run over by the person that's passing on the right. I can guarantee you that, because they're not gonna see them standing in front of a truck or a mini SUV or whatever. And then from Katie's standpoint, coming eastbound and westbound, coming around that blind corner in front of the cemetery, that's always been way too fast. And getting out of Pompacitic or getting out of our east side driveway is an impossibility because the cars are going too fast. But I just think that the width of that road now, they used to drive up onto the grass. Now the sidewalk is elevated, so you can't drive up onto the sidewalk, but the road is wide enough to pass on the right, which I believe you're not even supposed to do anyways. So that would be nice to choke that down with those landscape medians, but I don't think it's gonna choke it down enough, and people are just gonna continue to pass on the right at a rate of speed, and somebody's probably gonna get hurt.
Massachusetts is one of the states that allows you to pass on the right of theirs. One of the few.
But at speed, it's gonna, I mean, it just,
A bicyclist is gonna get hit,
yeah,
because I know they swerve to go around me.
yeah. So, it's an issue there where I think that the people who spoke earlier tonight are correct. They've actually gained speed in that area, and I don't know how wide these landscape medians are, if it's gonna choke it down enough to slow people down.
Yeah, they're about 8 feet. They're about just short shy of the distance of what the middle lane is now. So it does bring it down to two about 11-foot travel lanes on either side. So rather than the kind of, I think what you're referring to is
There's
that
a designated spot though to take a left
That-
on Pompey and a left
That's
on
right.
Red Acre at the end of this project, right?
Yeah, there is. And so what, instead of kind of the way it is now where there's not really a queue lane to go left, instead drivers kind of come up and they pull up a little bit outside of the actual road there and everybody just skirts around. The turn lane is then pushed into the center lane. So
Correct.
rather than actually make a movement to the right to get around somebody, you're just still in your normal travel lane. So vehicles still just travel eastbound normally. The turn lane is now in the center. It kind of gives two lanes rather than having to jog around people is the intent.
Storage.
And then I'll go over here next. I know you've been waiting. Okay.
I have a question about snow. You're talking about the islands and where they're placing snow. Is there a plan in place for the snow? Right now, they used to pull it down White Pond Road, and now they actually drive into my driveway, go in and push it over inside my yard this winter. We were blessed with white snow, but that's incredible to me. And I don't know how they're clear where those little islands are, and with the sidewalks, if they're trying to push it over to get it over the sidewalks, which they're not gonna plow, where are they gonna put the snow? They used to just push it off, and we had basically no snow this year. So last year was amazing on the amount of snow. So, and then that melts and there's drainage issues. Are they putting a plan together for where the highway department's actually gonna manage the roads? And is that something we can see?
I don't know yet. I know that when this project was being designed and we got to that issue came up, it's been in the highway department's kind of wheelhouse to handle the plowing issues. I know that was a discussion that was happening with Mike Clayton, the superintendent for streets. So I'm not exactly sure what their intended plan is. That would be a good question for them at this point. But they were certainly aware and thinking about how they intended to deal with it.
Does this project address taking a left off of Red Acre onto 117 in any way, shape, or form?
So if you are on Red Acre Road, there is no there's no like light or anything like that. There's nothing of that nature. The intention was to slow folks down as they came into the district, and as they were approaching Pompo, there'd be the median island there, there'd be the crosswalk, to get by slowing the traffic even a small amount. What we were talking about with the engineers was being able to create some more breaks in traffic rather than the continuous train. And that was really the way the project was designed, was to basically create intentional breaks in traffic. That is crucial that we've got people pulling in and out of the south side as well to help that happen the way this is designed, because that will stop vehicles behind it and create those breaks to allow people to get out of the shopping center, to get out of Red Acre Road. But, you know, we've had 2 designers now look at the Pompo Red Acre intersection. We've talked about roundabouts, speed lights. If there was an easy fix, we'd be talking about it. I know that's not a great answer. I don't like providing that kind of answer, but unfortunately, it's a tough spot. It really is.
I know you mentioned that the wheelchair concretes were all done. So now we have a crosswalk to nowhere at one point. You're ready to have a crosswalk to nowhere?
Yes. Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. We've had a crosswalk to nowhere for a while, but are you referring to a new one now because of the ramp?
I'm talking about the one that's in front of the building that has Stowe Cafe.
Okay, yep. Yep, right now it looks like a crosswalk to nowhere. So
There's
there
a
are,
crosswalk to nowhere.
yeah, so there's a couple of ramps there. That is one of the areas where where one of the medians will go in. That will connect to the sidewalk on both sides.
So they're gonna break the sidewalk. They're gonna break that berm, and they're gonna have to lower that sidewalk down that good 18 to 24 inches.
I believe it is already,
No.
that is not already installed, that particular concrete ramp. So that's where it's going.
It's not on the south side, there's
Yeah.
nothing on the south side.
Okay, yep.
I would also just add that the pavement is not completely installed yet either, so it won't be that as severe of a.
There's no break whatsoever.
Right.
Anybody
Right
who's
now,
coming
yeah.
across is going to have to walk down 117 in an area that has already been narrowed and take their life in their hands for that 15 to 20 feet until they can get into that plaza.
Yeah, I'm happy to look at the plans with you, but I can tell you that is not the final condition, so.
I certainly
we'll work
hope
on
not,
that. Yeah,
because
that's definitely
I
not.
get to look at it every morning.
Understood.
Walking in the driveway into the.
Understood.
Yeah.
In the back.
This is sort of a general comment. It seems as if a lot of references made towards the businesses. And this is supposed to be to benefit the town. What about the residents? So when she's talking about the safety of the kids on the bus, when she has to wait on 117, it may just be bad wording, but yes, we're going to see what trucks are in there. I mean, those kids are residents of this town. Parents pay taxes the same rate as people who own the business properties. I would hope that it's not just what about the trucks, what is safe for the buses going through. And if this is supposed to make things aesthetically pleasing, what someone else mentioned about certain parts of the 117 near White Pond just continually go down, and I don't know where they are at with their, though I think it went into a lawsuit because for them to bypass the special permit issues. I know that the planning board historically, going back 10 years, felt there was an issue there, and that wasn't your idea. But what type, going forward, will more emphasis been put on the residents that live here? So you're telling a person from out of town that owns property here who historically has not cared about the community at all except to make money. There's another resident that lives here, her safety is a danger getting in and out of her driveway now. I would hope at least as much, if not more concern, would be put towards addressing her concern of safety getting in and out of her driveway to the concern of someone who owns a business about the puddles in his parking lot when he has no problem with clearing out area beyond belief right up to the conservation line and saying that there's no more new business being done there than was in the past. It's really infuriating for me.
So there's certainly no bias between businesses or residents. I know you're referring to Lee's property in particular. Ton of impacts. Can't deny that. And we've been working closely with Lee. Obviously, we can't resolve everything, and we can't all be happy about it, but we're definitely working on that. What I wish I had tonight was the slide from when we did our Complete Streets project, and we got over 300 responses from people from all over parts of town. but the amount of resident comments on Lower Village itself was unbelievable. And it really showed us that, and this was after this project had been designed, and it really told us, like, yes, we're going in the right direction here. There are so many residents in Meeting House, in these other places that live near Lower Village, in the side streets that come off of it, and in other parts of town that want more access to these places. So I wish I had that for reference, because I do feel like that helps show that.
I don't deny that, I just think that if you're putting the money in so people have more access, and you want people coming in and out, and I remember reading something like, they were hoping this could, like on my street, White Pond, could be like, you know, in Concord. And I thought, I grew up in Concord. You want that type of thing, one, you don't let businesses push you around. Two, you make them follow the bylaws. Like the signs and the tackiness of the signs. And I took probably 14 pictures of signs that were violating the bylaws and had to send them in. Why would someone have to do that to get, why aren't any of these bylaws just enforced? Well, yeah. It just,
I hear it.
you know, we can have a beautiful street, we can all walk down to look at rotting trucks that should be in a commercial zone that are allowed.
Jess, is this about the road tonight? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I get it. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different feelings from a lot of the people down there. I get it. I've heard them. It's duly noted.
Hi, Jesse. I'm a little disappointed in the planning board because I feel like a little deja vu from the last year before the town meeting. 2 weeks before the town meeting, you're looking for money, and you had no plan, no plan, no plan. Here we are, 2 weeks before the town meeting, you're looking for more money, no plan, no plan. Well, how can you ask the town, or the planning board ask the town, give another $500,000 to a project you don't have any idea what it's gonna be? Now, you know how I feel about how it's affected the property, raised the sidewalks up 14, 15 inches in front of our house, the water problems. Rich Presley's got the same issue with him. You can't just put storm drains in front of his property because he's got the cars there, and they're gonna possible leakage into there. So the grading of the road really needs to be fixed, and I haven't heard anything that tells us that $500,000 is gonna be able to grade those roads low enough to give him what he needs and to make our property look right. We're talking about the residents and the businesses. The residents should have the, you know, we're the minority in this part of the district because there's so few of us. But we should have our property shouldn't be devalued because you put a sidewalk that's 14 inches up. You come down the road, you look at the fence that I put in 14 years ago, 10 years ago, and you see half of it because the sidewalks are so high. Is the town gonna put fill in there and raise the fence? How are we fixing those problems? We haven't had any plan yet, and it's because we don't have the plan. 2 weeks before the town meeting, and in 2 weeks you're gonna be asking for money, and here we have an open meeting where we have the right to come to see and talk, and yet we have no plan to say, well, here's what the plan is, and how are we gonna go forward with this? I can't justify giving any more money to this project until we know what the project really costs. And you can say guesstimate. You know, you and Valerie are very nice people, and you're saying, let's push this project through, is what you're kind of saying to me, and I think to everybody else, let's get it done. It's not just get it done, let's get it done right. And I don't think we're on that page as of yet. I don't think we're planning as of yet. I mean, I've got a bunch of different concerns. Nancy was talking about the bus turn. Well, it's no different if she has to turn down Hastings Road. The road is no narrower than Hastings. If she has to turn on Hastings, than it was over there. But yet, I watched cement trucks, or I watched the crane company go down that road when it when the new entrance wasn't there. They go down at 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour. You get one of these trucks that weigh about 50 ton going down the road. I mean, it's not going to stop if my grandson or granddaughter runs out on the road. I think putting the entrance in there is good, doing what we did, but I think that trying to widen that to compensate for a truck or a bus, why don't we do it to every road in town? And that's the way I feel about it, because they have to slow down because it's something they're used to. Now they're not used to it anymore. So now instead of doing 30 miles an hour down that corner, they have to stop, they have to turn, just like they do on Hastings Street or any of the other small streets, Adams Drive, or they go down Taylor Road to Adams Drive. They have to stop and turn the corner. It's just what they have to do.
So your question and your uncertainty is the fundamental issue here, and
Correct.
certainly going into town meeting. Let me just go back to where you started. 2017 town meeting, it's not that we didn't have a plan, we didn't have an estimate going into that town meeting that we all were comfortable with, and we worked up until that point to get it. Now, where we are here, we kind of told the story. I won't rehash it again of how we got here. Obviously, this is not how we typically operate in our department or the planning board operates. We like to have all of these things well documented, figured out before we go anywhere near town meeting. Just so happens in this project that we've been faced with some issues that we could not have foreseen and have been trying to catch up ever since. In regard to some of the design issues, we know the core design issues that need to be dealt with are really technical in nature. And I get there are some in here that have been talked about tonight. There's White Pond Road. We've had some issues on abutting properties that we know we need to take care of. There's also some design issues that we've asked the design engineer to look at, but that we are comfortable with are correct, even if they are going to be different and going to look different. And one of those is the sidewalks being what appears to be higher. And the reason that they're higher is because that road was not draining in a proper fashion in the first place. And in order to get the types of grades and to get the high points and the low points to work, to make a new drainage system work, that is why things were raised up, to try to get that road to drain in the right way. So there was a design focus. It wasn't that it was willy-nilly. I understand that it looks and feels a lot different there, but we have every expectation that this designer is going to be looking at each of those pieces. If we could somehow have this more buttoned up and say that, and hope that town meeting was later so that we could go in, we would do that, but we don't. And we are looking at a construction season in a road that could further deteriorate, and we need to make the bad decision here, or the uncomfortable decision of going forward, recognizing that some of those core things that we would want to have figured out by this time, we are still literally processing, working with our designers to adjust and make right.
So if for some reason the town doesn't vote for this money, okay, you're back to square one, the road's gonna stay like this forever?
If we don't have funds to work on this project, the road will not change from its current, unless we would have to go back to the drawing board and try to understand what's the triage here. Is there anything we can do with funds that we have? I don't know what that looks like.
So I don't wanna see this happen again, is my point. My point would be is last year you had a problem, it became a big cluster mess. And my thought would be is that, okay, let's make sure we have a plan that's gonna work for everybody. Now, you talk about the elevation of the road not being high enough, it looks different, but has the town said, okay, well, all these abutters, all these, my property, Katie's property, the property where the beautiful birch tree was cut down, all those properties, are they all where they belong? Are they the right elevations? Now, the road can be lowered and do the same kind of grading. You're just saying everything has to go up. I don't agree with that.
We specifically asked the design engineer to make sure that all of the grades and everything at all of the properties, specifically at the driveway points and the areas where there would be potentially more drainage coming off of the road, be evaluated to make sure there were no impacts. So that is definitely part of the redesign. It's pretty much core to the redesign.
So they're gonna lower the grade?
We don't know exactly what their approach is. So the approach is sometimes there's some artificial high points, there might be an extra catch basin. What we want from them and what we've asked of them is you tell us what you think are the best ways to do this. We will use our consulting engineer, our highway superintendent, all the folks, everybody that we have at our disposal to figure out of those options which would fit this project best. And that's the exercise that we're undergoing right now, and it's why we don't have an actual plan to provide you tonight to show you what those solutions are, because we're in the process of figuring them out.
So we don't have a solution, and we don't have an answer on the price as well, but we're still asking $500,000. Okay, I understand.
Linda in the back.
So, I just have a question about how some of the issues and concerns that were raised at various times about Lower Village Cemetery and the access to there, and there's the parking that they could pull off at one point is now gone and the sidewalk is there. I know there's a concern raised by many people because that is still an active cemetery and people do visit it, and my ancestors are there, and there's hundreds of family all over the country that come out and visit at various times to there. So just wondering how you guys are looking at that.
So when the project was originally designed, we talked with our cemetery superintendent and tried to get a sense of how is it that you're using the cemetery. And one of the things came up is, look, I need a place to unload the mowers and the other things to take care of Lower River Cemetery. So originally we had a type of berm that would have been difficult to pull up on. We rolled it over with the design engineer. We asked them to look at it. What can you provide us? They suggested, well, you know what, in that location right along the frontage, why don't you use a Cape Cod berm? If the truck needs to get up there from occasionally to unload some equipment, they can still pull it off. It's not ideal, but it'll work. That was, at the time, the extent of the conversation. As far as people parking on on 117 to access the cemetery, this issue didn't really come up until we were actually in construction. And I think there maybe had been a burial or something that was taking place. I know I spoke with one family that was that did have a burial, and that had issues with parking vehicles. And that was the first time that issue really came up. Let me just say that as far as parking on 117, it may have worked in the past, but certainly with 16,000 cars a day and parallel parking on grass, you have no cues to any other drivers that you may be pulling off the road in that location. You're coming around a bend at the gateway of town. So as we've been thinking about this, we're thinking, you know, is there a better solution than maybe going with what we had originally done there? And so I've told our cemetery superintendent, and planning board has discussed it at meetings. We're happy to work with them to try to figure out, let's actually look at this kind of holistically. Can we come up with a plan that would create better accessibility there? I do think the sidewalks, the crosswalks, all ADA compliant are actually an improvement. Obviously, it doesn't allow you to park right next to it, but I think if we actually come together and try to figure out a solution, we can get there. The discussion to this point really hasn't been about that. We've kind of been learning about this in real time, obviously, as all of this has been happening. So I get it, and I'm happy to kind of look at it further. We haven't gotten it.
I'd just like to say on the cemetery, I'm kind of disappointed that this wasn't considered by the planning committee prior to the whole design being made, because there's obviously 500 marked and 300 unmarked bodies in that cemetery. My husband being one. And to get in there, you take your life. No handicapped person can get in. And most people at the Florida cemeteries are elderly. And I would really think that we should put a whole lot more thought into that piece. I know all of you've got your issues, but those are the most ancient documents that we have in our town, and people do access them, and the data is public, so people will be coming to see the cemetery for their relatives. I'm just disappointed.
Understood.
I know most of the funds have been spent, but while we're waiting for the final in June, would it be possible to throw down some temporary stripes so that people can safely cross? When you winterized, you took out everything, and so there is no crosswalk at all. And then similarly, you very kindly lowered all of the water mains, which I appreciate, except for the one as you come out of Red Acre Road. You can cut your tire ribbons because it's still high and you have to make a turn right across it. So if they could address that with a little bit of tar or lower it or something.
I think that one is eventually, when the project is finished, is going to be off the road and separated by a curb, if we're talking about the right one. As far as the interim striping, I don't know the answer to that, but I can ask and see if there is an easy option just to figure it out. We can look into that, sure.
I just want to go back to the snow situation. We had one median, the one in front of my house, and they did a really shoddy job of plowing there, and we only had a few snowfalls, but 3 that were really plowable. And I actually had to go down to the police department to turn around when I was westbound to get into my driveway because I couldn't get through the snow. I'm concerned about all the other medians that are going in and how they're going to be plowed. Because if they didn't plow around the one that we had, what are they going to do with all of the others? That's a big issue because, I mean, I'm just one car now because my roommate moved out after the construction and the break-in. But those medians need to be cleared, and I know that's a highway department thing, but it needs to be taken into consideration with the planning of them. If they're not gonna be plowed, they shouldn't be put in.
I mean, one thing that I would ask the highway department, based on where they are in their own discussion of how they plan to deal with this, is how did they deal with the meetings that were there before? How does this differ? And how, you know, I mean, there's some good questions to ask. I totally agree. And
I know I sent you
we'll do
pictures
that.
of the one
Yep.
day, and I mean, it was 4 inches of snow. I don't have a 4-wheel drive, we're all not, you know, just driving the same types of vehicles, but I was able to drive safely on the road, but I couldn't turn safely into my own driveway. And we do have a lot of emergency vehicles that go through that intersection. But the cars that are going to be turning in and out of those businesses, since it's a business district, they need to be able to get into those left turn lanes that it looks like might not get plowed.
There's another issue at the Bradley Lane. I noticed that there are markings from the AT&T crossing the road. Is that an intention that there's going to be some more digging going on?
There are markings from AT&T crossing the road. I think that was likely just the contractor marking out the existing utilities that were there. Because
No,
that
just throughout the winter, they kept on coming and marking that right across the street and going into that area across with little flags.
That may be due to another project that we were getting an existing conditions survey from Bradley Lane to the center of town. So I know that they did mark some utilities for that project. So it may be for that. In which case they aren't planning digging, they were simply
Unless
marking
they've
them.
come 2 weeks ago, they remarked that area constantly.
They did just finish the survey, and they were working with some utility contractors. I think Valerie is probably on to something here, and that it was probably had to do with that recent survey. I mean, we literally just got the final survey yesterday, so it likely.
I'm just saying that because
I understand.
I saw the AT&T truck parked right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're marking the road.
Yeah, you know, when we started this project, one of the first things we did was reach out to the gas companies and say, do you guys have any plans to do a major revamp? Don't tell us that in 2021 you're going to dig up the road again, please. You know, let's see if we can get this all, figured out at the same time. There wasn't any plans like that, so unless, I think it had to do with that survey, but I just can't say for sure.
I actually have 2 questions. The first one is, are we going to be able to see the plans before they start the construction? And is there going to be another meeting and presentation with what the changes actually are going to be? I think that's really important, because when we went over the plans, as you know, it was not proposed to look the way it is now constructed, at least in front of my house. So I want to know how the drainage is going to affect futures and what the plan is for that, pedestrians, snow removal. I think that's important, that we're educated what our properties are going to look like, businesses and residents. My goal actually really is to get this done, and I hope that's your goal, and to do it correctly. It's just a mess down there, and it really is hurting the businesses dramatically.
Yeah, so through May is really a crucial time for the design. When we go through some of the design solutions, I know on our slide that you saw at the end there, right now the designer was expecting to begin construction if everything goes well in June. So there is that period where we will have something that looks more finalized. There will be some sort of hearing forum, that kind of thing, to try to bring that out, make sure that everybody has had comment.
And my second comment is, it is a business district, not a commercial district along 117. There's no commercial zoning that I know of in the lower village on 117.
She did some kind of a survey, and in the survey it showed that it's commercial. It was talking about commercial with these, it's on the website, on one of your websites. They talk about commercial, when they did the evaluation of the business district.
Right.
They kept calling everything commercial.
Yeah.
Well, the people who were doing the survey obviously don't know the difference between commercial and business. So you probably need to revisit them on that.
Yeah, I think, and from a zoning standpoint, words matter a lot like that.
That's correct.
But from the standpoint of that study, it was kind of commercial versus residential, wasn't really parsing it out in the same way. So I understand the concern there, but they were kind of apples and oranges in terms of what that report was referring to. But that is not lost on us, the difference between the commercial zoning
what is allowed and the business district zoning and what's
It's
intended.
misleading.
I get you.
Jesse, back probably 2 years ago, when you had your first presentation down at the community center now, I asked a question about snow removal in the winter.
Yep.
It could be November through March. And mostly removing the snow so people can get across the island. Are they planning to shovel the island itself off? Are they planning to shovel the sidewalk accesses off? And it was told that, well, we liability, this, we don't do equipment. We're 2 years down the road, we're spending at least 2.5 million, but yet we haven't made it all-weather accessible at all down there. It's only 9 months at best, safety islands and sidewalks. Why don't we bite the bullet, we have equipment, and do the thing correctly now, and make it right?
I understand that argument. I think it's a bigger question than one that our department or the planning board is going to be able to answer. Yeah, and but it's understood.
Jesse,
Yeah.
do you want to say something like that?
Sure.
Is there?
Right here.
I'm Jim Salvian, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Thank you, Brian. On the snow removal thing, there's been some interesting comments. If I understand, and now I forget who said it, I think this woman did. Snow, because of the islands, snow is lingering in the median of the road. The plows aren't, frankly, as I sit here right now, I don't know what most towns with islands like that do to get rid of the snow, but I will speak to our highway superintendent about that. As far as clearing sidewalks goes, this is an issue that we hear about from people maybe once every 2 to 3 years. Essentially, there are two models. The towns to our west have three-season sidewalks. They have crews that clear municipal properties, schools obviously, places where the elderly go. We follow that model right now. Many towns to our east, notably Sudbury, that have a lot of sidewalks, have invested in these little bombardier sidewalk snow plows that you see, each of which now costs well over $100,000. So this is a turning point. I should say that with regard to commercial districts, and business owners, you're going to have to cover your ears right now. Many municipalities have bylaws that require the business or residents in a commercial district to take care of snow plowing, because it doesn't make sense to build a sidewalk and have snow all over it. Long way of saying interesting issues, and I'm going to take them back and talk about them. First, we got to get this project going, though. And I think we all have realized that the bottom line here tonight is that some things happened that nobody anticipated. Frankly, the planning board hired somebody who should have been able to do this job. They had every reason to think they should have been able to do that job, and they didn't do that job. And now we got to finish it. And as far as your question goes, yes, remedies are being considered and the first steps are being taken right now. Okay? Thank you.
Well, after all these comments, you got a lot on your plate, and there's a lot of situations that were done. In the big picture, everybody gets a mulligan tonight, and I hope you get it right the second time around. Thank you. You get no mulligan. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, I'd just like to throw my support behind really looking into the speed limit issue, because I do think controlling the speed coming into town just prior to White Pond Road would make a huge difference in making all of this work even better than it is set out for the speed limit that they're currently at. You know, if they're slow, it will improve turning, it will improve pedestrians' ability to cross the road, it will improve everything, access to the road. So I think that's worth really diving into and really seeing what the process is for that. And I think you would get a lot of support for that.
Even if there was a sign, you know, a flashing sign, like before you came into the village that said, you know, I don't know, I personally, I mean, I live right on Elmridge, and I'm not exactly sure what the speed limit is, because I think I remember seeing it once down the street, you know, by the police station or something. And so if you had a flashing sign, that was the speed limit. I think that, and that can't be that expensive.
So I don't know what the solution will be, but what I'll say is that the next time we have this discussion, we will know exactly what that process is and have a better answer, for better or worse, on how the speed limit process works, whether or not it seems to be the appropriate place here, and if the planning board is really the one to even be talking about it, or talk with other departments in town if that's something that needs to be looked at. So I hear everybody on that issue. Dennis,
You can agree, or we can agree, that Monday through Friday, it's the same traffic going east to west, west to east.
Probably.
Wouldn't camping out a police cruiser in our lot or next to White Pond Road or right at the mouth of the cemetery, leave a cruiser there for a month and have them pull people over, that would certainly start slowing people down. I mean, it works everywhere.
Dennis is right. Before they took the island out over here in White Pond, there was a officer used to sit there on a regular basis, and the traffic was slower then, and unfortunately he retired. Damn.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I didn't quite get to finish all my thoughts.
Okay.
I also agree, I live on White Pond Road, and I agree that that turn is just, it's a smidge too tight. I don't think it should be wide like it was before. There was a lot of confusion coming in and out of there. I do miss the median. I thought it was charming, you know, the little island there. Nevertheless, it's gone. So, but, you know, I think there is a healthy compromise for getting those trucks off and on White Pond and allowing the bus to safely turn and everybody else to safely turn off that road. It is crazy. And I made that turn from left off of Red Acre onto White Pond. I'm surprised we don't have any more accidents there. It's absolutely horrible. Another reason why those traffic controls should, I hope will help, but I mean, I don't know that that's going to last forever. You might want to look on the horizon with what you want to do with those access roads, because it's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and I think just, and you didn't have, there's not a question there. I appreciate the comment. None of these things are solutions indefinitely, and they're not meant to be. And so we're going to work this project through, and we'll continue to look at the road village. We'll continue to try to assess what's working, what's not. This is what we're trying to figure out, is what is the best solution at this point in time, and that's how these kind of projects work. So I appreciate the comment. I know it's getting close to 8:30. I'll take a couple more, and then I'll stick around, especially if there's specific comments regarding specific properties. Maybe I know you've been waiting for a while.
I just wanted to second the whole snow removal on the sidewalks. If we're going to put them in, it'd be nice to use them. I get it. It's an added expense, but it would certainly be nice. Was it?
I just have one little suggestion with the White Pond intersection. And you said you were going to do some simulations. You mentioned trucks, but you do need to do a simulation with a bus, because the bus doesn't bend.
Right.
The trucks all will have the front rig and then the back part that turns quite differently than a bus. So you do need to do those simulations with the buses and of course the fire equipment. But the buses are very different in the way that they...
Yeah, it's a school bus and fire apparatus, the two biggest things that we want to make sure are solid there. We're definitely going to look at that. So Valerie and I stick around here if there's other comments, but for those of you who kind of, we'll cut people loose here at 8:30. I'm happy to stay and have some more. I appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate the comments and questions.
You're looking